When Usher was super young, he got signed to a guy named Reid, this famous music executive. Usher then loses his voice. Reid wants to help him, get back on track, so he sends him over to this guy named Puff Daddy. And as you can imagine, Usher had a problem, he just didn't know it yet. See, Puff Daddy was this up-and-coming music executive who could really turn someone into a star. He put them through this thing called Flavor Camp, and during Usher's term in this Flavor Camp, he lived with Puff. And in Usher's words, he would see questionable things. He said at any given time, you can open the door and see a bunch of random people playing Netflix. He said he would be up all night partying when all he really wanted to do was go to the studio. And this is when people speculate that Diddy did something to Usher. Now, I need you to listen to me.
Usher has finally broken his silence, and what he's revealed about Diddy is sending shockwaves through the music industry and beyond. After decades of speculation, half-truths, and backstage whispers, Usher has decided to speak publicly about his early experiences living with Sean Diddy Combs, and the picture he paints is nothing short of disturbing. As a young teenager, just 13 years old, Usher was sent to live with Diddy under the guidance of industry veteran Reid, who promised the arrangement would help develop Usher's talents and immerse him in the music business. But instead of finding mentorship and structure, Usher found himself thrust into a world filled with excess, adult parties, strange rituals, and behavior he admits he couldn't process at the time. He describes the experience now as deeply confusing and emotionally jarring. He was living in a home filled with hip-hop elites like Biggie Smalls, Mack, Lil Kim, and Faith Evans, but instead of feeling supported, he recalls being too young to even understand the dynamics he was witnessing. He said Diddy took him to clubs he wasn't legally old enough to enter and exposed him to party environments that were far beyond his maturity level. At the time, it felt like a crash course in fame, but in hindsight, Usher now says it was psychologically damaging and left an imprint that has lasted into adulthood. These revelations have added even more fuel to the ongoing legal inferno surrounding Diddy, who is currently facing a tidal wave of criminal allegations including racketeering, sex trafficking, and coercion. Diddy's legal team has been working overtime to suppress evidence gathered during federal raids of his LA and Miami mansions, as well as his digital devices and hotel rooms. They argue that these searches were conducted under false pretenses, claiming that salacious and misleading information was presented to obtain the warrants. They are also insisting that Diddy's ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, was a willing participant in the alleged freak-off sex parties, and not a coerced victim as the prosecution claims. With Cassie expected to testify in court, the stakes have never been higher, and the situation took a darker turn when one of Diddy's top lawyers, Anthony Rico, suddenly filed to withdraw from the case, citing irreconcilable differences and saying he could no longer serve under any circumstances. His exit comes amid reports that the powerful legal firm Grubman Shire Mycelis and Sachs also dropped Diddy as a client after Lady Gaga allegedly threatened to sever ties with the firm unless they cut him off. The same firm has represented global icons like Madonna, Bruce Springsteen, and Paul Simon, and the fact they abandoned Diddy after over 20 years of partnership signals that something deeply serious is brewing behind the scenes. Meanwhile, Usher's testimony is looming as a potential game changer. His account of being exposed to questionable environments at such a young age is already sparking renewed scrutiny of Diddy's actions and the culture he fostered around him. And this isn't the only scandal haunting Usher. Legal documents from 2012 resurfaced recently, revealing that Usher paid $1.1 million to a celebrity stylist after allegedly transmitting herpes to her. The documents describe graphic symptoms and claim emotional and physical distress. While Usher claimed he was cleared of STDs at the time, the case was settled privately. These revelations, while unrelated to Diddy directly, reflect the complicated web of power, sexuality, and secrecy that often surrounds the entertainment industry's biggest names. At the heart of all this is Justin Bieber, the pop prodigy discovered on YouTube who rose to fame under Usher's mentorship. For years, Bieber publicly thanked Usher for launching his career, but recent actions suggest their relationship may have soured. Not only has Bieber distanced himself from Diddy, but he also unfollowed Usher on social media and declined to perform alongside him at the 2023 Super Bowl halftime show, a move that surprised fans given their history. Usher confirmed the snub during an interview on The Breakfast Club, stating he had reached out to Bieber for a possible performance, but Bieber declined. Usher tried to downplay the situation, claiming it was about telling a different story. But the tension was clear. Bieber's silence speaks volumes, and many now wonder whether he, too, was exposed to troubling situations early in his career. There's footage of a young Bieber surrounded by adults in unsettling videos that, in hindsight, raise red flags. Some allege that Diddy once sought temporary guardianship of Bieber for a 48-hour period, and rumors swirl that Bieber's descent into drugs and erratic behavior may have stemmed from trauma inflicted during that era. Eyewitness accounts suggest he was never the same after being part of Diddy's inner circle. Reports surfaced describing drastic personality changes, with Bieber allegedly becoming reclusive, paranoid, and heavily dependent on substances. One chilling rumor claims that after a stay at Diddy Camp, Bieber began using drugs daily. Some connect this to a broader pattern, an industry pipeline where promising young stars are used, manipulated, and then discarded. This theme comes up again and again. Witnesses who were close to Diddy have described inappropriate incidents at his parties. In one particularly disturbing anecdote, a girl was allegedly sent to the hospital bleeding after a private encounter. Though unconfirmed, stories like this continue to mount, painting a picture of systemic abuse. Diddy's legal defense argues that all of these parties and freak-offs were consensual and private, and that the charges stem from his race and success. But prosecutors insist there was coercion, fraud, and sometimes even force involved, especially when drugs were allegedly used to disorient victims. The trial is shaping up to be one of the biggest celebrity cases in recent history, not just for the charges, but for the social reckoning it represents. It's not just about Diddy, it's about an entire culture that's allowed powerful figures to operate without consequence. Hollywood's glitzy facade is beginning to crack, revealing a darker reality beneath. Usher's willingness to come forward is a pivotal moment in this reckoning. Though he once stayed silent, perhaps out of fear or loyalty, he's now speaking up, and people are listening. The details he shares, whether subtle or direct, challenge the narrative that fame equals safety and mentorship. For years, being tied to Diddy was a sign you had made it in the industry. Now it's beginning to feel more like a warning sign. Bieber's continued silence is haunting. Despite having a massive platform, he has avoided discussing his past with Diddy, or even offering support for Usher's recent revelations. Some speculate that Bieber is protecting himself, either legally or emotionally. But the silence is growing louder, and as more information comes to light, people are starting to question who knew what and when. Meanwhile, Diddy continues to claim he's being unfairly targeted by a system that doesn't want to see a successful black man thrive. But his defense is growing thinner by the day, and as more lawyers back away and more stories emerge, the truth appears increasingly difficult to hide. Even Diddy's long-standing industry allies are going quiet. Rumors are flying that insiders knew about his behavior, but looked the other way for years. As Usher prepares to testify, and Cassie takes the stand, the music world is holding its breath. This trial isn't just a courtroom drama, it's a cultural flashpoint. And if even a fraction of these allegations are proven true, it will send ripples through every corner of the entertainment industry. Usher's bombshells are not isolated anecdotes. They're the foundation of a wider story that involves power, manipulation, and broken innocence. For too long, we've celebrated the success stories without asking what price was paid for that success. Now, with Usher's voice rising above the noise and Bieber's silence speaking volumes, the truth is finally demanding to be heard. As Diddy's legal team collapses and more names come forward, the empire he built on fame, mystery, and bravado may soon crumble under the weight of its own secrets. And for the first time, the world is watching, not to dance or celebrate, but to listen, question, and hold accountable. What's more telling is that the public is no longer willing to look away. This time, the spotlight isn't on the glitz, but on the grit, and no amount of celebrity sparkle can hide the cracks forming in Diddy's carefully crafted image. As the legal proceedings advance and testimonies continue to stack up, the narrative is no longer under his control. Each headline, each leak, and each name added to the growing list of witnesses peels back another layer of protection once afforded to powerful figures. And for those who once idolized the mogul, the question becomes not just what he did, but how so many stayed silent for so long.